Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube. My name is Apotheosis. I want to make a detailed video about an in-game mechanic that you may or may not even know exists. It's actually called tolerance. It's super relevant to every player, regardless of where you are in your progression. Whether you're just breaking into Trent 10 or you've been downing the boss content daily on burning mode, it's very important for you to understand how to manage your tolerance stacks. A lot of players right now, you can see the graphic that I made, they're having trouble CCing the boss as it gets into the later stages of the fight. And there's a lot of different questions floating around that really just have the same answer. That answer is, how are you managing or how are you countering your tolerance stacks? If you are already doing this and you have a general idea of how tolerance works, then just check out the description below. I'll have timestamps that you can jump around between. Maybe you find something that applies to your progression. Maybe you find an interaction that you didn't know that I found out in my research for this video. I'll also include 3 strategies and videos of examples of those strategies with me 2-manning some stage 10 bosses. If you do learn something new, please leave me a like. If you want to see me make more content and you want to see that content, please subscribe. And if you have any questions or criticisms about my video, then just put them in the comments below. I'd be happy to see those, and I do want to get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, we're going to start the video off breaking down tolerance to a very simple level that every player can understand. Tolerance is just an in-game mechanic that makes it harder and harder to land effects as more effects land on that target. The way that it does this is it increases the target's resistance against that school of effect by 10%. It will do this for each stage of tolerance that target gains. Okay, so we have to discuss 2 things here. First, let's talk about the types of effects that abilities fall under, and then we're going to look at resistance. Let's start off by trying to understand this graphic that I made. You can see in the top left we have a 3-turn restrain. That was actually applied by a move called Light Clockwork, that's Reina's S2. And you can see next to that it says that it is a spell effect. So restrain is a spell effect and it applies spell tolerance, stage 1, increases spell resistance by 10%. You can see this for the rest of the abilities in the graphic. Panic applied by Goblin Strike, Blaze applied by Ignition, and so on. Okay, so now let's look at where you can find this information in the in-game UI. One of the places you can find this information is going to be under the skill description for that ability. Mikazuki's second skill is called Phantom Barrage, and that casts a physical effect that causes bleeding. So you can see that bleeding is a physical effect. She also casts a nature effect that causes epidemic. Epidemic is a nature effect. You can click this underlined bleeding and it'll take you to the in-game help UI. It'll tell you what bleeding does, and you can also see again that it falls under the physical type of effect. Epidemic, you can see what epidemic does, and that falls under nature. You can get to this menu as well by clicking the settings menu. Go to the help button, and you can see a lot of the in-game mechanics spelled out in detail for us here. Tolerance isn't detailed, that's why I did my research. If we scroll down to the skill effects tab, you can see here there are actually 7 different types of effects: physical, spell, nature, curse, enhance, weaken, and soul. Now the graphic that I had a couple seconds ago, it did not have any enhanced tolerance or soul tolerance. And this is because tolerance increases resistance. There's no resistance stat against enhance or soul effects. So let's take a look at this stat, resistance. Resistance is actually a defensive stat that gives that target a percentage chance to avoid skill effects from landing. We're all very familiar with being resisted. You can see in the graphic, you get that message, it says resist, and then you look at the target, and that effect is not on the boss. So this is the statistic that works behind the scenes in the calculations. It gives you a percentage chance. You can see again there are 5 different types. We have weaken, physical, curse, nature, and spell. So without any gear on, Mikazuki actually has a 1.64% chance to avoid physical effects. Her base stat is only 20, but this would get any stats that are on her gear added to it. That translated into the percentage to avoid. She has 1.64. However, if she has 1 stack of physical tolerance on her, that's going to add 10% to this number here. She goes up to 11.64% chance to avoid physical effects. It doesn't calculate based off of this number. That would only add 2, and we're a lot lower than 11% if we only have 22 flat stat. Okay, also 10% on 0 is nothing. Okay, we don't gain any percentage chance to resist. So tolerance works straight off of this number here. Very important. So let's recap what we've talked about so far. Restrain is a spell effect, and when you land restrain on a target, that target is gaining spell tolerance. Tolerance is making it harder to land future attempts at landing spell effects by increasing the resistance rate by 10%. Okay, if you still don't understand what's going on here, pause the video, look at this graphic, go back, review what we've talked about so far. Because for now, we're going to talk about some finer interactions, and then we're going to get into management and strategies. Revisiting this graphic, you can actually discover a couple more things happening every time that we apply an effect. It is a stacking mechanic, so a physical tolerance stage 2 will increase to a physical tolerance stage 3. But in addition to this, it's also refreshing the duration. So even if that tolerance stage 2 had 1 turn left on it, when it increases to a stage 3, it is now refreshed to 5 turns left. This becomes very important when we talk about management and team synergy. For now, I just want you to understand that you're both gaining a stack and refreshing the duration. One more thing to notice here is the type of effect that tolerance is. You can see that it's actually a soul effect. We mentioned soul effects briefly when we were talking about different effect types. It is one of those types that we don't have a resistance against. This just means that it's an in-game mechanic and it's going to happen. We can't avoid it. However, in the in-game help UI, you can see that soul effects cannot be removed or stolen. This means that Ilunes like Catherine who remove or steal buffs won't be able to interact with tolerance directly because of its characteristic as a soul effect. There is one exception to this rule, however, and her name is Mikazuki. She has a passive built into her kit called Devil's Bane. She has the ability to reduce a random tolerance effect by 1 level when attack is successful. This is huge. It's actually the only interaction in the game that works directly with tolerance. Because of tolerance qualification as a soul effect, every other measure we're going to talk about is an indirect counter or a strategy to deal with tolerance. Also, Devil's Bane is a soul effect, so it can't be resisted by the target. This is one of the interactions I'm going to talk about later. There's lots more to talk about when it comes to Mikazuki's kit. She'll be the third strategy that we look at. Even though she can't be resisted, I did mention that she can be evaded. If she is evaded, her attack is not successful, and this passive won't activate. So before we move on to the strategy section, I just want to make sure that you have an idea of the differences between resist, evade, and immune. We already talked about resistance as a percentage chance for a target to avoid an effect from landing. Evasion is very similar. It too is a defensive stat that gives you a percentage chance to avoid an attack entirely. This is actually important because skill effects are in addition to the attack damage. So if a target evades an attack, the skill effect is never activated because the skill effects are in addition to the attack. And that target avoided the attack entirely by evading. Very important to know the difference between evade and resist. The last thing you might be running into is immune. If you see immune pop up on your target, then that means that as much as you tried to land that effect, at that point in time that effect was not going to land. That target was immune to that effect. Very important to look at the difference when you want to troubleshoot your team, why your effects are not landing. Take a look at what's actually happening. Is the target resisting, evading, or is it immune? There is one more spot you're going to want to look if you're having trouble landing your effects. You want to look at the activation phase of that ability. So Renae's S2 has a 75% chance of inflicting a spell effect that causes restrain. This means that 25% of the time of her using this ability, 25% of the time she will not even attempt to land the restraint because it will not activate. This is in comparison to an ability like Kuhnhar's S3. You can see that it inflicts the target with a physical effect that causes stun. There's no percentage chance to activate this. This will always be attempted. Now, let's recap all the places where trying to land effects can go wrong. The first step is, did the attack land? If the enemy evaded your attack, then you were never able to attempt that secondary effect. Second, did you activate the effect? If you have a percentage chance of activating, then you have a percentage chance of not even attempting to land that effect. Third, is the target immune? If the target is indeed immune, you will be blessed with a message, and as much as you try, you will not be able to land that effect. If you made it to the fourth and final check, you're now encountering resistance and probably dealing with tolerance, so it might help if you take a look at the strategies that are to follow. I do want to apologize because I underestimated how much work this video would be. I'm going to have to come back to the strategies part of this and I do want to break down in detail and make the strategy simple for everyone to understand as well. So hopefully you have a better grasp of tolerance. I do want to readdress the strategy section in a part 2 of this video. I will get to that as soon as I can, hopefully in the next couple of days, so stay tuned. If you do want to know how to deal with tolerance, just check out some other content creators. They have plenty of strategies and CC decks to deal with the bosses for now. And with your knowledge of how tolerance is working, I'm sure you can apply those things together and start downing some bosses if you haven't gotten there yet. I do want to close the video out with a full clip of what I opened it with. You'll see me 2-manning Trent 10 using Kangrim and Chloe Van. Their gear is not impressive. You can see his attack is only 8200. The only thing that I would recommend is the 3-piece full moon set. Chloe Van as well. 8400 attack, not impressive. She does have the 3-piece full moon set. Okay, you will see me resetting tolerance stacks, and with your knowledge that you gained from this video, hopefully maybe you can figure it out for yourself. Otherwise, I will make it simple for everyone to understand and incorporate it into their strategies in the follow-up video as soon as I can. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. Aloha, nice to meet you. See you soon.
I don't think about us often. I don't think of you at all. Between these reckless occasions, there's always someone new to fall. He says, come close, baby, we know you. It's getting late, let's head home soon. Kiss real slow, then I let him go. Say goodbye like it was nice to know you. So lonely, so thinking about me like I'm only there when you call. On my knees I call. Have you met me? Never let you leave. 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 I'm sick of you and others wasted. Time say you hate it. Won't admit I'll take you places you never go. Babe, I'm in your roads. It's funny how you think you got me. I've seen you places you should not be. Say it'd break you if I don't leave. If I go, tell me who'd stay home. You don't wanna get too lonely, so thinking about me like I'm only